Good morning and welcome everyone to this remote meeting of Lewis District Council Audit and Standards Committee on Monday the 18th of January 2021. I'm Councillor Julian Peterson, Chair of this committee. In a moment, I will invite my fellow committee members to introduce themselves. I will ask officers who are in attendance to present reports and respond to any questions from members. To introduce themselves at the start of their reports or before speaking. Just a few meeting pointers before we start. Please can I ask everyone to mute their microphones when they're not speaking. If you do have connectivity issues, you may find it helpful to turn off your camera when not speaking. Please can all councillors and officers clearly state their name each time they speak so that it is clear who is speaking. Can you please indicate when you have finished making your contribution so that I know I can move on? Finally, if any councillor wishes to speak, please use the raised hand icon on Teams. I can see you and will call you in turn to speak. Agenda items 1 to 3. I'll now take agenda items 1, 2 and 3 together. I will now ask my fellow committee members to introduce themselves to listeners via a roll call. Councillors, please can you confirm your full name and indicate if you're acting as a substitute and state if you need to make any declaration of interest on any item of the agenda. If so, please state the nature of that declaration. Before I start the roll call, we haven't had any apologies or substitutions to my knowledge. I can also confirm that I have no declarations to make in respect of items on this agenda. So the roll call, Councillor Stephen Gauntlet, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Stephen Gauntlet. I'm very sorry that you can't see me. That may not be a bad thing, but I've lost my camera this morning and I'll have to work on resolving it later. I have no declarations of interest to declare. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Christine Brett.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Christine Brett and I confirm that I have no interest to declare in this meeting today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Berman.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Councillor Roy Berman and I can confirm I have no matters of interest to declare in the agenda of this meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Davis.
Good morning, Phil Davis. I have no interest to declare on any matters on this agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Ross.
Morning, Chair and everybody. My name is Councillor Adrian Ross. I have no interest to declare on this agenda. Thank you.
And Councillor Christine Robinson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Christine Robinson and I have no interest to declare on any items on the agenda in this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I will note here that in addition to the officers who will be presenting reports later, we have Democratic Services Officer Jennifer Norman in attendance and other Democratic Service officers are assisting in the background on this meeting. I will now take agenda item 4, the minutes. Councillors, do you wish me to sign the minutes of the last meeting on November the 16th, 2020 as a correct record? I assume that they are agreed unless anyone present wishes to speak. Now, we're all okay? The minutes have been approved. Item 5, I'll now take agenda item 5, urgent items. There haven't been any. Item 6, we now turn to agenda item 6, written questions from councillors. So far none received. Item 7. I will now take agenda item 7, update on the Lewis District Council's use of covert surveillance powers, pages 11 to 14. I would like to invite the Council's Counter-Fraud Investigations Manager and RIPA Monitoring Officer Lee Ewan to present the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
My name's Lee Ewan. I'm the County Fraud Investigations Manager, and I'm also the RIPA Monitoring Officer. I'm here today to provide an update on the Council's use of covert surveillance powers. This is under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. This is, in brief summary, this is effectively the power in which we can obtain covert surveillance material where there is certain cases of investigation which warrant or could warrant a potential sort of or conviction of around up to sort of over 6 months. So in terms of us as a local authority, we're only looking at limited areas such as fraud, subletting, fly tipping, those sorts of things. Within that, there are provisions that we need to follow. So there's a quite strong internal process policy, which needs to be, any application needs to be authorised by an authorised officer, and also then needs to be approved by a magistrate or county judge, etc. Within this as well, this also includes our ability to undertake online surveillance and so social media access, as well as the sort of traditional things in terms of surveillance of using the cameras and other sorts of activities. Within the year of 2020, with this report, there is no updates to provide. However, I am happy to take any questions if anyone wishes to raise them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now invite questions and comments from members of the committee. Before, please may I remind members to use the raise hands function, and once you have asked your question, remute yourself and lower your hand. Please also introduce yourself before you speak for the benefit of those listening and all whom are in attendance today. Thank you. Any questions? No questions? Okay. So the officer's recommendation.
Sorry, Chair. Okay. I did just a question, if that's okay, as always.
That's fine. Good.
May I ask a question about the online covert activity? I was wondering if there are any stats, how many cases or how much online covert activity has been undertaken. Yes, and also there's a policy attached here, which is the council policy on conducting internet and social media research. I think you said in addition to that, there's guidance on the procedures to follow when the research is likely to obtain private information. I'm just wondering whether that policy, why that's a separate policy to the one on conducting internet and social media research, and whether it's one that should be attached in future as a background paper, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. In regards to the online surveillance, there is two sort of steers here, I should say. We are following RIPA in terms of regulatory powers in terms of surveillance, so that warrants that we'll go through the process of go through authorisation and get it signed off and then getting approved for a certain period of time. We require that to be a criminal offence, so therefore for us to undertake it, the sort of social media access needs to, the case itself needs to warrant it. However, there are certain things within the authority that are sort of deemed as non-RIPA. So if there is an activity or a case that we're looking at as an investigation or in regards to the report where there is a debt collection to the side, this obviously is a civil matter and wouldn't warrant a criminal offence. So therefore, it wouldn't go through the same sort of policy itself and be signed off by a sort of magistrate or authorising officer, etc. So what we would do in that place is follow the same rules itself, but be internal. So in regards to if someone wants to take sort of research or online research of a person, perhaps to obtain information in regards to where they have moved to, if they've moved out of the area, and wants to trace them down to collect the debt, the council tax debt, or something along those sorts of lines, then the officers would need to follow the same procedure as to record and get approval from their team leader or their manager, and then record what action they've taken and how they've gone about it. This generally is what we've deemed as something that our account management team, which I referred to in the report, would sort of undertake. And that information is then retained. And when we are reviewed, the information commissioners come in office every sort of couple of years to check us. We then have that record there to view. So in terms of RIPA itself, that activity doesn't quite come into this report itself, because that's something separate. In terms of that activity, I've been informed that there has been little of any of that. What I would say is, in regards to online surveillance, obviously we are in a stage where lots of information is online and there is an awful lot of information there, but we also need to take it into a degree of some sort of doubt. When we're looking at evidence, we want something which is factual. A lot of information you can find online is sometimes information that people want to put on there in terms of their what they're doing, their lifestyle choices, how they're undertaking their sort of life. The pictures they put up will be something that they want to put across. But if we were to use that as something factual and took it to a criminal sort of court case, we would be on very sort of shaky ground. It wouldn't really meet the criteria, as would say a bank statement, which demonstrates that someone has a large amount of money in a bank account, or their sort of transactions are going back and forth, or there's a utility bill which says that's in someone else's name, so it could demonstrate that person isn't living. These things that are factual. So online surveillance itself does have limitations, which I think is where we, like any of this activity, we would only look at it as the last resort. It's not something that we would undertake as a means to just a general sort of across the board, this is the approach we would take. We would take every sort of step we can do until we would consider using online surveillance or any kind of covert surveillance when it's authorised and approved, whether it's RIPA or non-RIPA. In regards to numbers, there's clear guidance as to what we can and can't do with online surveillance. We have guidance in regards to looking at information. So if we can do an online search and any information we gather at that point, that is not counted as surveillance, because we've only got in and looked at it once. So we can obtain information and then take it away and then look at it. If we were going to go in and do it repeatedly, so if we were going to go into someone's online, say Facebook or something on those lines, and do it the second, third, fourth, then I think you're looking very much at surveillance, and this is where we would need power, we need authorization to undertake that sort of activity. So far, we haven't found a need to undertake it. So that's why, in terms of figures, we do have them recorded in terms of the work that we do in terms of searches, but not in terms of cases which warrant authorization through RIPA itself. So you mentioned about a report. Would you just remind me if I can take it away and have a look, see if we need to go over the duplication that you mentioned? Was there two reports that you said were needed?
No, sorry. It mentions, well, sorry, attached to this is the policy on conducting internet and social media research, and then in 4.3 it mentions that the council has issued its debt recovery officers with guidance on the procedure to follow when their research is likely to obtain private information. I was just wondering whether that should be a background paper in future, because that seems to be another, if I read it correctly, it seems to be another policy that you're following.
Absolutely right. I should make a note of that.
That was very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. So, is there a consensus that we can note this report, please? Yes. Okay then. So that's agreed. We'll now go on to item number 8. The delay to the external audit of the 2018 and 2019 statement of accounts. I would now like to invite the Council's Deputy Chief Finance Officer, Corporate Finance, Ola Oluwabi, and the Council's External Auditor, well, if he's here, I don't think he is, to give a verbal update. Okay, Ola, thank you.
Yeah, thank
you. Mr. Benjamin is here. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the councillors. My name is Ola Oluwabi. I'm the Deputy Chief Finance Officer. This is to provide an update in terms of the ongoing audit of 2018-19 account. The committee met on 16th of November 2020, and main resolution from that meeting is that officers in consultation with Deloitte to produce a list of actions, and this is outstanding actions in respect of 18-19, and that should be followed up with additional meeting of the committee to receive those list of actions and any update. Following that meeting, we have been having discussion with Deloitte in terms of providing us with all those lists of outstanding action. Our efforts so far has not been fruitful, so we've not been able to to lay hand on the list. My discussion with Deloitte, in terms of Ben, is that due to lack of resources, they've not been able to look into this request. And therefore, from officer side, there hasn't been any significant update. However, Ben is here with us today. I will just hand over to him. Ben, good morning.
Good morning, thank you, Ola. Yes, so I think the team had been summarising items which we had felt outstanding and had shared that, but the number of places where we and council were not quite in the same place as to whether specific items were open or not, and that would require more discussion to resolve, and that was not possible before some of the team members went on leave, which only just coming back from now because they'd returned overseas, yeah, I think otherwise Ola has summarised our status there. So we've continued discussions with the council, but as the overall position set out that this is a challenging time in terms of resourcing, that this particular spell in January and February is not a period, ended December, not a period in which we had expected to be able to get resource, and that we have looked to schedule an extended booking to start again with and to perform the work that's remaining on the 18-19 audit, and indeed into the 19-20 and current year audits, but that January and February in particular is not a time, and likely now March is not a time when it's possible to do this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Sorry, could you just repeat that last sentence that you said?
So I think as I said when we'd had the previous meeting and was in our paper, there is a the times when resource and public sector resources available to do these jobs. We didn't anticipate having resource to pick this up again until April to do the actual testing. I've been looking to get staff somewhat sooner than that, but the pattern of when work is and when resource availability is means that the January and February period in particular is exceptionally hard. That has become significantly harder in terms of our overall resourcing capacity and time challenges since we last spoke, because of the effect of both higher infection rates and the lockdown on our staffing and engagements overall. And we're just working to deliver what is practical on a realistic timeframes, unfortunately.
Thank you. I'll introduce Councillor Christine Robinson. What do you mean by resource problems, by the way?
Oh, well, our work is delivered by people. Some of those people are ill. Some of those people working hours and capacities being affected by homeschooling and similar, and childcare and family care. We have the same number of people that we started with. We have for the amount of work that we have overall, we have the same number of people. The amount of work that we can get out of them is lower at the moment because some of them are ill, some of them are being affected by other responsibilities, and that is meaning that productivity is effectively lower from our resource, and so therefore the length of time that everything is taking and commensurate demand on our resource is higher. That is true across all of the professional services firms and has been the subject of various comment by regulators in the public sector, by the ICAW. You may have seen comment about that in the press in the last week or so in the context of public company reporting.
Thank you. Councillor Brett, did you want to say anything? Because your hand was up, now it's down.
I was actually just going to register my disbelief about what is going on here and the fact that we've been paying for this company to do this work for some years, obviously for some time, and we're just not getting a service. And I know things are difficult at the moment, but COVID isn't new. This has been going on now for 18 months, 2 years. I'm sure my colleagues will have quite a lot of other things to say about this as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson and Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gauntlet was actually before me.
Oh, sorry. His hand is beneath my WhatsApp.
I'll go after him.
I don't know where my hand is, Councillor.
Okay. I'll move the icons. That's it.
Can I just come in then?
Yeah,
I have a very direct question actually for Deloitte, and that is, do you think, Mr. Benjamin, that you are in breach of your contract?
No. I mean, let's go back, because that was a period of time as mentioned. The council was under legal requirement to produce draft accounts by the 31st of May 2019. We received a first, and for us to do our work, which we had scheduled staff for at that point, we received we were told repeatedly that they were just coming and would soon be closed. We eventually received a draft in November 19, at which point we did not have resource available to do it, and we're entering into our busiest period. We're not able to get staff again to do it until the normal spell of when local government accounts happen, which is in June, July. That is something that is entirely understood by PSA as our contracting body, because we didn't receive things to audit. Now, when we came in to audit them, if I may carry on, when we came in to audit them, there were quite a lot of issues with what we've been testing, and availability of support and checking, which was set out in the report. The extent of work required relative to the extent that we are expecting to be on this, and therefore available to book staff, scheduling and planning stuff, is completely out of kilter with each other. And ultimately the work is done by people who we have to book quite some time in advance to do things, and if it can't be achieved in the period, then it is carrying over, and that is unfortunately where it is. There was two parties to the contract, and council's preparation of things has to be in a fit state before we can then audit them.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson now.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christine Robinson. I'd either, Ben, either yourself or Ola, to sort of, what are the ramifications legally to Lewes District Council for not having their accounts audited which basically was almost 2 years now. It will be 2 years come this year. And can you give us an absolute definite as to when these accounts are going to be audited? Along with 2019-20, I think we need a date, a firm date, to be frank, because it is just absolutely not good enough. I mean, we had the meeting 2 months ago. I'm sorry, but Lewis District Council, along with other councils, have all had to jump, you know, for the unfortunate pandemic we find ourselves in. So I find it very, very hard to believe that in 2 months nothing has progressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Would you like to answer that, Ola, and then Mr. Benjamin, please? Mr. Sheriff, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. In terms of the legal, the statutory requirement is for all local government authorities to close down their account within a statutory deadline, and following that to be audited and approved. However, while there is no clear legal remedies in terms of how long this thing has to be done, it's just not good for the council image to have 2 to 3 years account audited. And that tends to have a bit of ramification as well in terms of our stakeholders, looking at our state of play, looking at our financial management, and reading too much into it. And I think that is the biggest risk for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ola. Have you anything else to say on that question, Mr. Sheriff?
No, I was correct on the legal side. As to Council's other question, I'm afraid can't commit to a fixed point because we still have work to do, which may well would find issues or have other challenges in terms of availability of supporting information, and therefore can't commit to a time.
Thank you. Councillor Ross. Councillor Ross?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got quite a lot to say with point Mr. Sharif makes around takes two to tango and that he's dependent on data. I mean, that was why I believe that I was one of the people calling for the list of the actions outstanding for the audit. To get a definitive list agreed between ourselves and sort of Deloitte around what work was required to complete the audit and who was responsible for doing it. And my intention was to be able to start holding our own department accountable and ensure that they delivered what was required. I was quite.
Councillor Ross, you're breaking
we
up.
haven't been able to have what I would anticipate to be a 1 hour to go actions. Actions just beggars belief. So yeah, very concerned around the fact that in 2 months we haven't been able to get a list of the even get a list of the actions that are outstanding.
Do you want to reply, Mr. Sheriff?
I mean, I understand where the councillor is coming from, and would have wanted to be in that position, but the reasons that I'd stated to start with, that's not possible.
Could I ask a follow-up, Chair? Does Deloitte and our own department agree that this is essentially a 1 hour meeting just to go through a list of all of the outstanding tasks and to agree who's responsible for producing what, or have I missed something? That's all I was expecting, just to get a list of the tasks that are required, and a list of responsibilities. I would expect that to be one hour and producing it. Can someone tell me whether it's more than that, and if it isn't, why hasn't it happened?
Yeah, so there is, well, somewhat more of that, more to it than that, of there being items where we felt we've requested something and council's used that something has been shared with us addressing it, and those are quite a number of points of detail where need our two teams to discuss what it is, and to look at, if we've received something, to look at the thing that has been received and sent through and say, actually, is that fit for purpose? You know, and that is not the largest piece of work in the world, but it is a piece of work that requires people to be available and have time to focus upon doing it. And it needs to be the people who have been involved on that work previously and know what the question, the backdrop of the question that they had asked or what has been received, and to clarify that down to then being, okay, these are the things which are open, or these are the things upon which we then need to do work. And whilst we kind of had got to say what we had thought was felt was outstanding, that bit of meeting of minds in respect of them, we ran out of time to resolve what before staff were on leave for the Christmas break, and it does require, the relevant staff looking at something and having time to consider it, to advance that forward to the point you can then have productively, the 1 hour meeting or whatever it is, where you're then saying, right, of the things we need to do, where is responsibility, what is reasonable timelines for them, etc.
Thank you. Sorry, could I just, Ola, may I just ask, because I'm a bit confused by that. How many times have you had to answer the same question?
I would say, I think many times. And what I would like to add to that question as well is that before November meeting, we have got a log in terms of issues outstanding and how it has been dealt with. We have shared that with Deloitte, and they provided us with what they think is outstanding. We responded by putting a comment in front of each of those queries where we are more or less saying we don't believe there is anything outstanding. However, if there is any list, we just want them to share that list with us. Then we've got stuff to work on, and that is what we've been waiting for. Thank you.
And that's where that discussion and meeting mind of, actually, you think you've given us something that addresses this, relevant team member didn't feel they've received something that addresses it. Let's actually go through what that is and why we're still not on that same page on these items. That is something that requires the people to have that discussion.
Okay, Councillor Ross, sorry, I interrupted your second question. Do you?
It's okay. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. I can't believe that we haven't been able to even get a list of the outstanding items. The holiday and homeschooling, I'm very familiar with homeschooling. My kids are sitting downstairs at the moment trying to do their work, and it's a nightmare. I totally understand. But the fact that we can't even get a list of the things that are outstanding is absolutely shocking. And lots of my very strongest, in the strongest terms I can, we need to get that list. My intention was to try and help you, Deloitte, lots of in terms of understanding the things that you're expecting from the council, and then me trying to help to get those things produced for you. If you can't even get a list of the things that are outstanding, then we can't help you at all. So please, Chair, can we make a very, very clear recommendation from this council that we get that list agreed between both parties?
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go on to Councillor Berman, and I see Councillor Bretton Robinson, you've still got your hands up, is that so? Okay, Councillor Berman.
Oh yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to address this to both parties, both Ola and Mr. Sheriff. My limited experience in business of only 50 odd years, if I have an outstanding problem, I make it a higher priority. And as the time has progressed, we seem to have made it a lower priority. We're not giving it sufficient attention. And in such a way, it's slipping further and further away. I'm quite certain that the council officers, if they know what is required, will make the time available, because we have control over making sure that they will do so. And I'm sure Ola wants to see it closed. It's occupying time and effort that could be better spent. So I do believe that we have not been supported properly by a proper examination of the programme of work, not dealing with the work itself, but programme of the work hasn't been properly dealt with by our suppliers. And I feel this is a strong dereliction, and it brings the reputation of our council into disrepute. And we cannot tolerate this. And we must bring whatever pressures we can to bear to find how we can engage with our suppliers in a manner that sees this completed before we're back being late on the next one. So please, Chair, can you express that for me as well? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. I think you've expressed it very eloquently. Councillor Barrett? No, okay. Has everyone had asked the questions they wanted to? Mr. Sheriff, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I know this must be very uncomfortable for you. I mean, you look quite embarrassed by what you have to deliver. But apart from holidays and sort of various other reasons or excuses, I do think that we do need some sort of action plan from you. This can't take long to do, because you know, well, I presume you know what's necessary to do. We have heard from Ola when he said they've asked the same question many, many times, answered it. He just said that. I don't understand why you're asking the same questions all the time. I mean, is it because you've got different teams working on it? I mean, that's one question. But the other thing is what Councillor Berman says. This isn't, I mean, we're a public authority which delivers things which you and your colleagues rely on in society. I would have thought that with some sort of ethical conduct, you made a bit more effort to get this done. After all, public authorities deliver schooling, your rubbish, your adult social care, and everything else. And we're just being brushed away from what an amateur, i.e. me, seems to be rather embarrassing excuses. You've got to get on with this, please. We all the councillors here report to their constituents, and the constituents are thinking, we can't get the audit signed off. And it's just poor. Councillor Gauntlet, and then I'll finish. Councillor Gauntlet.
Thank you, Chair. I would also go as far as to say that personally, I would, with respect to Mr. Benjamin, I would like to meet, not me necessarily, but someone, maybe a group of us, to meet with his senior partners, because I think this is serious enough to have this discussion at that kind of level. I don't think it's fair to send Mr. Benjamin here on his own like this. This is moving towards private eye time, if you get my drift. I think it is very, very serious. And I would recommend that we do have a meeting at the most senior level possible. If I could just leave that on the table. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So if I'm to round this up, Councillor Ross, what did you I have mentioned that you would like to have this this list of actions from Deloitte, as preferably before April.
Yeah. No, that is necessary for us.
I think it's been covered by your. I think it's been covered by your other points, Chair, and also I totally agree with Councillor Berman. You know, we can help ensure that our finance department deliver the required materials, but only if Deloitte can actually come up with a list of the things that they think are outstanding. And without that list, I think we're just drifting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Berman, do you feel your comments have been fairly represented in our conclusion?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think they do. I would hate to feel that the public think that we actually don't care. That's certainly the impression that we're creating. When I speak to my constituents, they think that we're a shower. And really, we're not a shower. We're being let down, and we cannot tolerate that. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, councillors, for endorsing what I've said.
And the person who's doing the minutes, is all this being minuted, please?
Yes, Chair. Jennifer Norman and Democratic Services. I can confirm that this has all been recorded. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank you, Mr. Sheriff, for coming along. I know this isn't fun for you. I understand that. I can see it in your face. Ola and Hamira, have you anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
Thank you, Chair. I think some of the comments that and feedback that we've received from the committee have been very, very helpful. We set out in the committee's last meeting, extended the opportunity of making sure that we meet in January and provide, or with the sort of anticipation to provide the committee with a progress report in terms of where we were and how we've taken a much more focused sort of view in terms of addressing some of the outstanding issues. And I think from my experience again today, and one of the things that I suppose is my key concern is that we are starting a budget process for next year based on an incomplete and unaudited accounts, and that is a very, very uncomfortable position as your Chief Finance Officer to be at. And I have to assess that risk in terms of my view of the accounts. But I also know that Mr. Sheriff has got his own, if you like, limitations and constraints, and I do appreciate that. I also want to kind of, again, extend my offer that it may be helpful for us to meet up with Mr. Sheriff's senior partners, just to make sure that he's being given the support that he needs from Deloitte at the more senior position and resourcing support, because in my view, and purely as an accountant, it just doesn't make sense to keep something outstanding and not finish it, because in my experience that is always the most costly option. So even from purely commercial point of view, it's best to put the resources and focus and finish it up so everyone can move on. We do have statutory requirements to have audited accounts. That is not going to go away. So the sooner we address that issue, the better. And maybe there is this point for us as the council's representative to meet up with the Deloitte's senior partners to make sure that that Mr. Sheriff is receiving the appropriate support that he needs to help the sort of audit to progress further. I would also kind of just again give a reminder, and I think I can thank you very much indeed, Councillor Peterson, about your comments about how local government has continued to provide key services. But my team last week had to produce 18 financial reports through childcare, homeschooling. Some of the team actually have been had health issues as well. But we are very mindful that our statutory deadlines are inflexible and we have to meet them. Our corporate deadlines are inflexible and we have to comply with them. So it may be that by sort of sitting down with some of the senior partners to make sure that if there are any sort of lessons to be learned, that we can share those. But we've had these new contracts where we are actually not the contractor for the audit service has been very unhelpful. And we know that the new recommendations made by Sir Tony Redmond are going to be taking us to possibly a more efficient way of addressing this final accounts and the audit issue. But before we reach that, we have got 3 years of accounts to go through, and those need to be addressed. So the urgency is there and is greater than it has been in the past, because in February, when we set the budget, I am going to be making sure that we are setting it on a baseline that has not been audited, and that has to be reflected in my risk assessment of the budget.
Thank you very much for that, Hamira, and we do appreciate all the work of the councillors that you're doing. Thank you. Is there one last question from Councillor Robinson, or can I conclude on that?
No, thank you, Chair. Hamira, could I ask you, please, have we paid Deloitte for the work for the audit?
Yes, I think I've been advised that we have made the payment for the contractual agreement agreed audit fee, although the work would be subject to variation, or the final fee would be subject to variations.
Okay, and 2019-20, we paid them as well?
Not yet.
No, not yet. That has not been paid, okay. Just 18-19.
So, my last question, sorry, I know you'll probably do it, but I just would like to stress that I think it is when you do get your meeting with the senior partners that we have a definitive date of when the 2018-19 accounts will be finally audited, and again for 2019-20, because we are again late. I would like to have your assurance that all, as far as you're concerned, that all the paperwork is with Deloitte for 2019-20.
You have my absolute assurance on that.
Thank you, but if you could please stress that. It's I can't believe we're just being pushed apart. We are, I mean, if this was anybody else, we would tell them, you know, we'll move on and we'll find somebody else. It's appalling service. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'll conclude with that. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Thank you for turning up, Mr. Sheriff, and thank you, committee, for your points. I hope I don't have to have another meeting where we're saying the same things. It would be very disheartening. Okay, so can we note that report from Ola and Hamira, please? Noted. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, agenda item 9. I note that when the agenda was published on 7th of January this year, this item was marked as the 21-22 Treasury Management Strategy to follow, but there has been a slight alteration, and we'll now be reviewing the Treasury Management activity for the period 1st of November to 31st of December 2020. Members of the committee and officers should have received this report as a supplement item following the publication of the agenda. Please may I check with all members of the committee to ensure they've received the report and have time to review it prior to the start of the meeting. Yeah, good. Thank you. I'd like now to invite the Council's Deputy Chief Finance Officer, Corporate Finance, Ola Oluwabi, to present the report on behalf of the Chief Finance Officer. Ola, thank you. Over to you again, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Ola Oluwabi, the Deputy Chief Finance Officer. Can I just say my sincere apology in terms of the agenda that was titled 21-22. It should be Treasury Management, which is just the monitoring report. Going back to the report, this report mainly covers 1st of November to 31st of December 2020. And this is the monitoring report in accordance to your timetable that we need to report. However, there hasn't been significant change when we look at what is going on as a result of COVID pandemic and bits and pieces like that. However, in terms of our fixed deposit maturing, we've only got 2 of them. And in terms of fixed deposit that have matured within the last 2 months, when I say 2 months, I'm talking about November and December. There were actually none. However, the rate of interest on our deposit between those 2 points is roughly 0.5. And in terms of use of money market, I mean, we've got 2 money market, which is Goldman Sachs and Dutch. We've got roughly 18 million with them. And the interest rate that we are getting from money market has been very, very poor. The problem is that if we don't put any money with them, we can only use DMO. And the problem with DMO then is that they are now actually on negative investment interest rates, which we don't think it will be good enough just to give millions of pounds to DMO, and we are not getting anything back. So MMF has been one of the organizations that we can use. In terms of compliance with treasury management and prudential limit, I can only say most of them have been green. In terms of our external authorized limit, we are still within the limit. In terms of operational boundary, we are within the limit. In terms of capital financing requirement, we tend to do that once in a year, so that information is currently not available. In terms of investment return, when we put the strategy together, our expectation is that we are going to have at least 0.1 in terms of our investment. Unfortunately, due to coronavirus, due to pandemic, due to what is happening in the market, that will not be achievable this year. And in terms of non-treasury management activities, this mainly made reference to the Lewis Housing Investment Company and Aspirational. And I've attached the link, economic forecast. Link is our treasury management advisors. And we think it's just useful to share their commentaries and development with the committee. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ola. I'll now invite comments and questions from members of the committee. Is that a hand up, Councillor Berman?
Yeah, I was just trying to find the machinery to do it, but I've now done it properly. Thank you, Chair. May I commend Ola on this report, which is clear and succinct, and appreciate the difficulties he have in the current marketplace, and thank him for his efforts. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Sorry, find the mute button. Yes, thank you, Chair. A few questions. Firstly, just to understand, Ola, you spoke quite a lot around the returns that you're getting. I just wanted to make so just my very rough maths. So if we've got roughly 30 million.
I believe Councillor Ross is frozen as well at the moment.
Councillor Ross, if you turn your video off, we may be able to just hear you better.
I did not get
it. Okay, the video turned off. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So, Ola, just my very rough maths. It looks as though we've got the order of £30 million to invest. You are expecting to get 0.1% interest. We've got 0.05% interest. My very rough calculation is that would mean about 15. We've got around £15,000 less income than we would expect. Could you just confirm if that's the sort of the scale of the deficit that we're incurring from this, or whether it's a more significant problem?
I'll say roughly yes. The income in terms of projected, we will not be able to achieve what has been projected. And something I need to clarify is that even with that amount of money, we are limited in terms of where we can put that money because our counterparty list, there is a limit in terms of what we can put within MMF, and there is a limit in terms of what we can keep with Lloyds, which means if we've got too much money coming in, then they have to stay with DMO.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, may I have one other question as well?
Yeah. Yes.
There's an Appendix A attached, which is an economic commentary. I was just wondering who produced that report and why it's attached here. My reason for the interest is it's kind of very positive around the economic recovery and so on. But my reading of it kind of really misses some of the issues for local authorities. And I think maybe if you're looking macroscopically at the whole economy, perhaps it is going to bounce back, but the impacts on local economies, with lots of people losing their jobs, lots of with the reduction in business rates and so on, is going to be much more significant than this suggests. And so I was just interested to know who produced this report and for what purpose and why it's included here.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. This report was produced by our Treasury Management Advisor, which is Link Services. The reason for including this is every quarter they will provide us with their economic view in terms of commentary, and that view is something that we tend to use to advise in terms of whether we are going to borrow or where we are going to invest. And in addition to that, it is a useful tool in terms of providing more information to the committee and for us in terms of looking forward. I'll give way. Omira want to come in as well.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Ross, for that question. In terms of the focus of the economic report, is really for us to use that intelligence so that in formulating our own financial plans and our own treasury management, we understand how the market is performing. But you're absolutely right that this has not a focus in terms of local government, which is going to be a much more of a sort of demand-led sort of, if you like, a financial mix rather than taking advantage of the economy. But it's really just to give us that wider economic outlook so that we can actually develop our financial strategies based on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I understand. So this is less to do with our finances and more to do with where we could, what our potential would be for investments and so on. Thank you, Ola and Tamira.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I personally find this very interesting, but I'm aware it is somewhat speculative, and experts don't always, they haven't always been right in their economic forecast, but it is interesting, and I'm glad that it's there. So thank you. Can we? So we've had our questions and the answers. So the recommendation is to note that the Cabinet accepts that Treasury management activity for the period 1st of November to 31st of December 2020 has been in accordance with the approved Treasury strategies. Are we all in agreement with this so that we can note the report? Yeah? Yes? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, item 10. Agenda item 10, date of the next meeting. Members of the committee were asked to note that the next meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee, which is scheduled to commence on 10 a.m. Monday, 8th of March 2021, will take place in a virtual capacity via Microsoft Teams and in accordance with Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020 and Section 13 of the related regulations. I'd like to, this is an add-on, I'd like to thank the committee and the officers for our help with Deloitte's. I know that we've heard this a lot now and the same excuses seem to come up, but thank you for your patience and your comments on that. And the replies from Ola and Amira. Thank you very much. So that's the conclusion. I'll now close the meeting at 11 a.m. exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.